It's finally over. The Tasmanian election of 2025, after 2 weeks of counting, has finally come to an end, and we know what Parliament in Tasmania is going to look like. And if anyone was hoping for a decisive outcome with a strong government that could form a simple majority working with a few people, the current crossbench is certainly not going to make that an easy outcome for either major party. You don't need me to explain the whole lead up to this again. Basically, the Liberals were a minority government with the support of some crossbenchers. The Liberals passed, or tried to pass, a very controversial budget, which would have driven the state massively more into debt, lost the confidence of the crossbench. Government, or rather Premier Rockcliffe himself, lost a motion of confidence. Liberals triggered an election, and here we are. Now, this election, I've already pointed out before, in terms of vote, the real notable change was that the Labor Party actually went backwards, quite embarrassingly so, after bringing down the government. They went to their lowest vote share, I think, since the early 1900s, but in terms of seats, that didn't translate into much of a change, really. The Liberals were on 14, they're still on 14. Labor Party was on 10, they are still on 10. The Greens were on 5, they are still on 5, and the crossbench is exactly the same size, but its makeup is dramatically different than what it was after last year's election. So following the 2024 election, the big story in terms of the crossbench was the Jackie Lambie network. This was the small group of MPs that were elected, supported by Jackie Lambie herself. They got 3 members into the state parliament, somewhat right of centre, I guess you could classify them. They're a bit broader than that, but to simplify it. And they basically put together a confidence and supply deal with the Liberals after the election. They worked with 2 independent MPs as well. That got the Liberal Party to 19 in terms of support in the chamber, so they had 1 more than the 18 that they needed. But of course, the Jackie Lambie network completely fell apart over the last year. And none of the Jackie Lambie network's MPs who all ran for re-election, actually got elected again, either under the Tasmanian national branding or under their own independent branding. None of them made it back to Parliament. So 3 of the 5 crossbenchers that got the Liberal Party to government after the last election are all gone. And the situation doesn't look really tenable, if I'm being perfectly honest. The Liberals could make their way to government, but it's going to be a lot harder than it was 15 months ago. The 2 independent MPs that supported the Liberals before are still both there. David O'Byrne has been re-elected. He will probably support them again. But Christy Johnson, an independent from Clark, well, she voted to bring down the Liberal government just a few months ago. So the likelihood of her supporting the Liberals again is very unlikely. But anyway, enough about the previous configuration. Let's look at the current makeup and see what the Liberal path to power actually is based on these final numbers that we now have. So, of course, the Greens, not an option for the Liberal Party at all. It really comes down to 6 crossbenchers that are not affiliated with the Greens or the Labor Party, independents, and 1 new MP from a minor party. And I don't want to get any of their names wrong, so I've just written it down here. The people that the Liberals are going to have to deal with are independent Craig Garland, Carlo DeFalco from the Shooters, Farmers and Fishers, Dr. George Rosé, an independent, another independent Peter George, independent Christy Johnston, and independent former Labor leader David O'Byrne. The path to 18 seats and a workable coalition confidence and supply agreement, or whatever you want to call it for the Liberals, is pretty difficult looking at those 6. So let's look at the most likely scenario. So we'll take Carlo DeFalco from the Shooters, Farmers and Fishers, who said that he's open to both Liberals and Labor, is a very big stadium critic though. But let's just assume, for the sake of simplicity, that him being from a more slightly right-wing party, that he will support the Liberals. And let's assume that David O'Byrne, the former Labor leader who turned independent and was previously supporting the Liberal government, also supports them. They are at 16 in the House, the Liberals. And it's really tricky to see where they get 2 more MPs on the crossbench to support them. These 4 are a pretty big problem. All of them are left-wing. It is fair to classify them as such. And they don't exactly have friendly relations with the Liberal government. Christy Johnston, she, a couple weeks ago, was crucial in bringing down the government because the Liberals, in her opinion at least, did not respect the confidence and supply agreement. So the idea that she's going to come back and support Liberals now Very unlikely. And then Dr. George Rosé and Peter George, those two were characterised by the Liberals as Greens in disguise, which, while pretty rude, is not inaccurate in terms of their personal politics. And Craig Garland, the man with the very impressive beard there, he actually has come out and said that he will not work with the Liberal Party, specifically because of their attitude and how they've behaved since this election got kicked off. And it seems that Liberals have really shot themselves in the foot with this one. If you missed it, there's something called the Marinus link. It's a proposed connection of undersea cables between Tasmania and Victoria. The main pitch here being that the two states can easily transfer and sell energy to one another if this is put in place, better fibre optic connections for internet access. But the way that the Liberals in Tasmania have gone about pursuing this, and they've recently signed off on it, has been regarded as pretty pathetic when it comes to transparency. Firstly, and most controversially, the Liberals have signed off on this only in the last couple of days. So while their government is in caretaker mode, they have signed on to and agreed to this new infrastructure proposal. But somehow even more concerning than that is the fact that the Liberals said they would not approve this, working with Victoria to get this underway, before they released the business case for it. Basically, a big document detailing how this will affect the Tasmanian people, how it will affect Victoria, what the cost benefits will actually be. But it turns out the Liberals actually approved this without giving any business case to the crossbenchers or to the broader Tasmanian public. And that kind of pushed Craig Garland over the edge, and a man who was open to discussions beforehand has now said, I will not support the Liberals under any circumstances because of how they've handled this. Sorry, that was a lot of detail for one specific MP not wanting to side with the Liberals, but you can see how the situation for the Liberals, of course, they've held all of their seats, their vote has gone up, they should see this as a positive election, but the reality is the crossbench has completely shifted ideologically and is nowhere near aligned with them at this point. Realistically, if you look at it at the moment, 20 of 35 MPs in Tasmania's House of Assembly now, a clear majority, are left or left of centre. And it seems that the path for the Tasmanian Liberals to form government is going to require probably enormous concessions to some of these crossbenchers to barely get a functioning majority together. But that begs the question, is the Labor Party therefore in a position to form government? Maybe. It's kind of a convention at this point, and this is what the Labor Party is doing. They are waiting for the Liberals to see if they can or can't form a majority from here. So we'll have to see whether or not the Libs can stitch some Frankenstein's monster of a supply and confidence agreement with these left-wing crossbenchers, basically just on the established norm that the party that wins the most seats gets to try and form government first. But the Labor Party is certainly going to try. Because, look, the biggest hurdle to the Labor Party forming government is the fact that they will have to get over this idea of never working with the Greens. And it seems that at least this beating they took in terms of popular support, their popular vote going down to barely a quarter of Tasmanians, hopefully, and it seems that in some of their post-election discussions, has woken them up to the reality that they need to learn to work with minor parties in Tasmania, or they're never going to form government again. And look, if that hurdle is overcome, and the Labor Party accepts, yes, we have to work with the Greens at this point, or else there's no way for us to go forward. We've been in opposition for 11 years. We have to get back in at some point. Well, the Labor Party is actually in a pretty strong position if the Liberals fail to get a supply and confidence agreement together. Labor and the Greens together are already on 15 seats, one ahead of the Liberals. From there, they only need the support of 3 independent crossbenchers, of which they can pick and choose who they want, because, like I said, most of them are left-wing or somewhat left of centre. So if that hurdle does finally get leaped over and the Labor Party accepts in some capacity working with the Greens, there is a very, not easy, but easier path to government than what the Liberals are currently looking at. And look, I'll be honest, if the Labor Party can't get over itself and form government when 20 out of 35 MPs are left-wing, then I think we just have to give up on the Tasmanian Labor Party ever being relevant again. And honestly, in that scenario, it's probably just as likely that both the Labor Party and the Liberals are unable to form government. And here is the most entertaining possible scenario, because if the Liberal Party isn't able to convince the new and much more progressive crossbench to work with it, and the Labour Party is unable to get over internal divisions over whether or not to work with the Greens and a broad left-wing coalition, well then, ladies and gentlemen, we are going right back to the polls.